Welcome to Herd Mentality, a podcast from StoneX where we discuss global dairy markets and what's driving them. Remember that the trading of derivatives such as futures, options, and over-the-counter products or swaps may not be suitable for all investors. Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss, and past results are not necessarily indicative of future results. We're recording this Wednesday, October 16th, about midday U.S. time. With me today is Dustin Winston. He's a commodity market analyst with our Dairy Market Insights team based out of Idaho. Dustin, can you give us a little bit on your background?
Thanks, Nate. Been with StoneX now for 5 years and absolutely love being part of this dairy team. Get the chance to work with a lot of really great folks across the regions. Particularly, I get the chance to consult with folks in the U.S. And Australia, Oceania regions primarily. Have been involved with you on our market intelligence offerings and most recently within StoneX Plus, and really providing that tool to a lot of the folks that we work with.
Yeah, I wanted to mention on the podcast, people don't realize it, but you do some writing on the weekly margin report we put out. You do more than half the global outlook report that we put out, and about half of the U.S. outlook report that we put out most months. Sometimes when you're traveling, I end up doing more of it, but you contribute quite a bit towards the writing on the U.S. side. But recently, well, for the past 2 years, your focus has been largely on selling and supporting our interactive dairy data platform called StoneX Plus. I know we've developed and released some new features on Plus. What are people liking and noticing about StoneX Plus?
Yeah, StoneX Plus is a fantastic tool. I can't talk enough about it, and I use it so frequently. I mentioned that I work with some of our clients in Australia and the Oceania area. Was recently there and at the SGX conference, getting to share some of these new features that you just mentioned, in particular the basis calculator and value matrix that we just launched. These tools provide a really great look for anyone within the dairy supply chain to evaluate where their positions might be, when might be a good time to enter the market, or even where their product that they're processing compares to the values that they would be using to hedge. So those are the two most recent releases that we've had. We also were discussing the Fonterra milk price calculator that we've just finished up and will soon be putting in Plus. A lot of folks seem to be really interested in that offering, along with some of our great features that bridge commodities like commodity indicators, or just a little bit more exposure to those price levels for any company that's involved in more than just dairy.
I get asked all the time about basis between, say, CME spot blocks and the cheese futures, or non-fat dry milk and the non-fat dry milk futures in the U.S. So the basis calculator allows you to quickly calculate what that basis looks like on a monthly basis, adjust it for lags, and it gives you the R squared and the correlation and the graphs. And it allows you to upload custom price series, right? So if you have a cash price that's not exactly the same as the CME or exactly the same as some other data series that we already have in Plus, you can upload that. It remains private, and the system will calculate your basis and your correlations relative to the futures, correct?
Yeah, you're exactly spot on. We can't see any of the data that's uploaded, but customers, those are isolated specifically to their account, their user profile, and it's a really great tool. 2 clicks and you're in. It gives you an optimal lag on whatever products you've selected. For example, if you're somebody that's producing whey that's a little off spec, but you're pricing off the CME, you can see how your own price compares to the product you might want to be using to hedge.
So you said you were in Australia and Singapore. I don't talk to people in Australia as much as I probably should. What did you hear, or what did you learn about the Australian industry?
And I think the most obvious one that we've seen data on for New Zealand as well is production is looking pretty good. And their margins, dairy farmers' margins, are pretty favorable too. The price is expected to stay good. Weather has been fairly favorable, and their components have been strong. So, granted, we're comparing against very early in the season in Australia and New Zealand, but things are looking up. Folks are expecting a little higher than maybe initially projected for milk production and milk solids here this year.
Yeah, I've had to raise the New Zealand production forecast for this season, given how strong they've been. We'll get the New Zealand production data next week. All the data next week, man. The Chinese imports, the New Zealand exports, New Zealand production, U.S. cold storage. Everything is next week. But New Zealand production has been better than expected. Australia's been close to expected, but definitely up from last year. There's been some changes in the structure of the industry in Australia. I know Fonterra is trying to sell their assets. Um, I think Pure Dairy just announced a joint venture with Great Lakes Cheese to produce and package cheese in Australia. Was there any talk about how their product mix is changing?
Yeah, we had some pretty interesting conversations with a handful of processors down there. It was intriguing to hear that they're really leaning towards producing fresh product as much as they can in country there, and are even looking to places like the US to begin buying cheese and exporting it to Australia because the margin is almost the exact same by the time that they get it, uh, pay for transportation over to domestic values. So they're really leaning on things like ice cream, yogurt, fluid milk, UHT products, and producing those more internally with the production that they have in their backyard.
Yeah, it makes sense. You know, when Australian production was declining year after year there was a lot of talk about at what point does Australia become a net importer of dairy. Um, with the rebound that we're seeing in production the past two seasons, that story's gone away a little bit, but definitely there's the potential to move some more product into Australia. So if the supply side in New Zealand and Australia is looking pretty good, what did you hear for demand expectations or price expectations when you were at the SGX conference?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. We heard some things across the board. The biggest one that stuck out to me was Fonterra, of course, being the big dogs in the area, said that they are planning on putting just about everything they can towards butter and skim production. Uh, Obviously, from a stream returns, and we look at the GDT prices, that makes a lot of sense. Whole milk powder is just not getting as much on the return. Uh, the worry for me, though, is at the same time, there was a lot of folks that discussed the decline in interest from China on skim milk powder moving into the future and seeing a significant drop in imports there. So it'll be interesting to see how those two combinations play out. But for the moment, folks are thinking that fat prices, skim prices will stay fairly favorable, particularly on the fat side, and whole milk powder will kind of just be the caboose at the end of the train.
Favorable. Does that mean the fat prices stay high or fat prices are low?
I think I mean right now they're pretty in line with the U.S. pricing following our drop in butter price. I think they're expecting these levels to stay, maybe grab a little bit more value, but there wasn't a whole lot of talk of there being a lot more room to the upside at the conference. The expectation was that they'd stay at these levels for some time.
Interesting. Yeah, and I forgot to mention when I was listing off all the contributions that you make to the reports, you're responsible for doing the pre-GDT and the post-GDT reports as well. So you're constantly looking at those numbers. And that post-GDT report, we have the stream returns there on the second page, and whole milk powder's been the weakest return for 2 years now. So it continues to make sense that Fonterra would push milk to any other product that they can. Um, did you hear anything about production in China or demand from China?
Yeah, heard a couple interesting takes from some of the folks that we work with and speak with in country in China there. The biggest one that stuck out to me was their consumer dynamic with an aging population, less folks being interested in having kids earlier on, waiting a lot longer to have kids if they want. There's just a decrease in the expectation of consumption in China. And it's no factor of them consuming less of the basket. It's just older folks don't need as much of each thing, right? So there is a expectation of a fairly significant decline in overall consumption as the population there continues to age. And from the supply side, I mean, we've seen massive growth out of China. A couple of interesting diversifying takes with Fonterra expecting growth to continue, but maybe at a lesser rate. I think I lean more towards some of the folks that were saying, yeah, cows are not expected, they're not expected to increase the herd at all. So any increase is probably going to come from just a milk solids point of view and will likely be more close to flat with these levels that we've been seeing rather than continued growth out of China production.
Yeah, that Chinese milk production is still a big open question to me. There's some sources that show it's still growing, and actually, that's another data point that we'll get. I believe we'll get the official third quarter milk production statistics from the National Bureau of Statistics in China on Saturday. Um, I'm they were still showing milk production growing in the second quarter. We'll see what it says for the third quarter. Other sources are putting Chinese milk production, or at least milk collections from licensed stations, down from year ago levels. Either way, whether we're seeing declines in production or slower growth in production, the farm gate milk price, at least for contracted milk, is still declining. It was flat for about 3 or 4 weeks, and now the most recent data point declined again. So I'm not sure if production is still growing a little bit or if it's declining, but it still seems like there's too much milk in China, given what's happening with their domestic prices. And I think earlier this week we were talking, and you mentioned that you heard a little bit more about powder being exported out of China.
Yeah, a couple of companies I've been speaking with have said that they've started to test just a handful of loads, one here, two or three there, of whole milk powder, particularly or powder gas flushed, and that they're getting some good quality markers out of it, shipping that from China to trusted buyers within Southeast Asia just to confirm that quality and that it works within the product mix that they're looking for. But there's definitely some growing interest. Another thing that I heard while we were there in the conference was that uh, sellers within China are putting a pretty big eye on Africa and looking at what opportunities they might have there with their business interests and ties to get some export flow to that region.
I think that's probably a natural destination for some of that powder. It's going to be really interesting moving forward. Right now, that domestically produced whole milk powder in China is very, very cheap compared to, say, Fonterra product. So if they can get over the quality hurdle, which it sounds like they are doing, um, they should be able to export it at these very competitive prices. But once the Chinese market finds better balance and that price spread closes up, it's going to be interesting to see if buyers are going to have some preference for Chinese product, or if they will just easily switch back to whatever the cheapest source in the world is. Uh, with that, I want to thank you for your time and sharing what you heard in Australia and New Zealand.
Thanks so much, Nate.
The StoneX Dairy team spans the US, EU, Asia, and Oceania, providing market intelligence, analysis, and forecasts through our interactive data platform called StoneX Plus, as well as full-service brokerage on the major dairy exchanges, the CME, EEX, and SGX. If you're interested in finding out more about our market intelligence or brokerage services, you can find more information on stonex.com.
This communication is issued in the European Economic Area by StoneX Financial Europe SA, SFE by the SFE presenters noted. StoneX is the trade name used by StoneX Group Inc. and all its associated entities and subsidiaries. StoneX Group Inc. companies provide financial services worldwide through its subsidiaries, including physical commodities, securities, exchange-traded and over-the-counter, under derivatives, risk management, global payments and foreign exchange products in accordance with applicable law in the jurisdictions where services are provided. References to certain over-the-counter products or swaps are made on behalf of StoneX Markets, LLC SXM, a member of the National Futures Association NFA and provisionally registered with the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission CFTC as a swap dealer. SXM products are designed only for individuals or firms who qualify under CFTC rules as an eligible contract participant and who have been accepted as customers of SXM. Wealth management is offered through SA Stone Wealth Management Inc., member FINRA/SIPC, and SA Stone Investment Advisors Inc., and SEC Registered Investment Advisor, both wholly owned subsidiaries of StoneX Group Inc. StoneX Financial Limited SFL is registered in England and Wales, Company No. 5,616,586. SFL is authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority registration number FRN 446,717 to provide to professional and eligible customers including arrangement, execution and, where required, clearing derivative transactions in exchange-traded futures and options. SFL is also authorized to engage in the arrangement and execution of transactions in certain OTC products, certain securities trading, precious metals trading and payment services to eligible customers. SFL is authorized regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority under the Payment Services Regulations 2017 for the provision of payment services. SFL is a Category 1 ring dealing member of the London Metal Exchange. In addition, SFL also engages in other physically delivered commodities business and other general business activities which are unregulated and not required to be authorized by the Financial Conduct Authority. StoneX Financial Europe SA, SFE is a securities trading firm registered in the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg under Company No. RC Lux B 10821. SFE is authorized by the Luxembourg Ministry of Finance and regulated by the Commission de Surveillance du Secteur Financier Registration No. P00000-012 to carry out, inter alia, the activities of investment advisor, portfolio manager, professional acting on own account, broker in financial instruments, and commission agent. StoneX Financial Pte Ltd Co. Reg. No. 2011305988R SFP is regulated by the Monetary Authority of Singapore and is a capital market service licensee for dealing in capital market products, an exempt financial advisor for advising on investment products and issuing or promulgating analyses/reports on investment products, and a major payment institution for cross-border money transfer service. StoneX Financial HK Limited C. No. BCQ 152 SHK is regulated by the Hong Kong Securities and Futures Commission for dealing in futures contracts. StoneX Group Inc. acts as agent for SFL in New York with respect to its payment services business. StoneX Financial Thai Limited SFA Akin 141774727 holds an Australian financial service license and is regulated by the Australian Securities and Investments Commission AFSL 345646. StoneX Securities Co. Limited SSJ Co. Reg. No. 010401047199 is regulated by the Japanese Financial Services Agency as a Type I financial instruments business operator. Kanto Local Finance Bureau FIBO No. 291 is a member of the Financial Futures Association of Japan for dealing and broking FX and FX option transactions, and is a member of the Japan Securities Dealers Association for dealing and broking stock indices and option transactions. The information herein is not a recommendation to trade nor investment research or an offer to buy or sell any financial product. It does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and does not create a binding obligation on any of the StoneX Group Inc. of companies to enter into any transaction with you. You are advised to perform an independent investigation of any transaction to determine whether any transaction is suitable for you. This material should be construed as the solicitation of an account, order, and/or services provided by the FCM division of StoneX Financial Inc., SFI NFA ID 0476094 or StoneX Markets LLC SXM NFA ID 0449652 and represents the opinions and viewpoints of the individual authors or presenters and does not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of SFI or SXM. It does not constitute an individualized recommendation or take into account the particular trading objectives, financial situations, or needs of individual customers. Additionally, this material should not be construed as research material. The trading of derivatives such as futures, options, and over-the-counter products or swaps may not be suitable for all investors. Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss, and you should fully understand the risks prior to trading. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future results. All references to and discussion of OTC products or swaps are made solely on behalf of SXM. All references to futures and options on futures trading are made solely on behalf of SFI. SXM products are intended to be traded only by individuals or firms who qualify under CFTC rules as an eligible contract participant and who have been accepted as customers of SXM. SFI and SXM are not responsible for any redistribution of this material by third parties or any trading decisions taken by persons not intended to view this material. Information contained herein was obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but is not guaranteed as to its accuracy. Contact designated personnel from SFI or SXM for specific trading advice to meet your trading preferences. SFP may distribute analysis/report produced by its respective foreign affiliates within the StoneX Group of companies pursuant to an arrangement under Regulation 32C of the Financial Advisors Regulations. Recipients should contact contact SFP at 656-309-1000 for any matters arising from or in connection with this podcast. No part of this material may be copied or duplicated in any form by any means or redistributed without the prior written consent of StoneX Group Inc. The podcast herein is not directed to or intended for distribution to or use by any person or entity who is a citizen or resident of or located in any locality, state, country, or other jurisdiction where such distribution, publication, availability, or use would be contrary to law or regulation. Copyright 2024 StoneX Group Inc. All rights reserved.